Hello, I'm back at it again with this series on warrior cats and ecology. Today's topic is cats and their interactions with prey. This video is mostly on just what cats eat, and not on what might eat cats, which is the next video. As with the other videos, this is for a college project, and everything I say will be backed up by citations on screen, with sources listed in the credits and below in the description. Part 1. Predator and Prey Overview. First things first, we have to get through a couple of terms and examples so we're all on the same page. There's a lot of things we have to consider dealing with how species interact with each other. Everything in predator-prey interactions is difficult to calculate. As with many things in biology, there's no simple, straightforward answer to many situations, and I encourage you to look at a scenario from as many angles as you can. This is a very broad concept with a lot to understand, and I only have so much time here, so this video is just a brief overview of an extensive concept. Take some of these explanations with a grain of salt, and look more into these concepts yourself if they interest you. Starting off with interaction webs and trophic cascades. To help talk about this, I'm going to be using flowcharts, but I do need to clarify about those for a second. Here's a very basic energy flowchart used in ecology. I will be simplifying what I say even further than this chart, but the basic thing you need to take away from it is how some of the energy moves. The arrows show energy moving through a system, and what we're talking about is the middle part, a basic food chain. The energy flows up from the bottom level towards the top, and as it does so, the amount of energy that is passed on gets smaller, indicated by smaller arrows. Interaction webs are like food webs, but instead of just showing how everyone is eat or be eaten, it also shows how organisms can compete. As the name implies, it's how everything in the ecosystem interacts with each other. Trophic levels are the tiers of the food chain. The producers, herbivores, carnivores, bigger carnivores, you get the basic idea. There's two ways trophic levels are maintained, top-down and bottom-up. Top-down is how the amount of predators controls lower tiers of the food chain, while bottom-up is how the amount of producers and prey control the higher tiers of the food chain. Generally, this is the one that happens most in nature. For top-down, if WindClan were to double in size, suddenly they might be hunting too many rabbits, and the rabbit population can't get very big. For bottom-up, if the amount of rabbits were already low, WindClan can't get very big in the first place, they'd probably start to starve. Trophic cascades are when something happens to a species that changes the other trophic levels. Perhaps the best known example is the case of killer whales switching to smaller marine mammals as prey in the northern Pacific, causing a drop in the sea otter population. The lack of sea otters meant their prey, sea urchins, now exploded in numbers, eating all the kelp. There's not a lot of data on these shifts in terrestrial ecosystems, but we humans have done some damage to contribute to them. Species like feral cats and foxes in Australia are considered super predators because they were introduced to an ecosystem that didn't evolve with them, and they were able to do a lot of damage. Thanks to how complex interaction webs can be, now that the damage is done, it can be difficult to counteract it. Taking a predator out can cause other predators to go up in numbers, or prey to go up in numbers from the removal of top-down control. There's a couple of terms I'm sure you've heard before in this series, but we'll still go over them briefly. Extinction is when none of a particular species is left, anywhere. To be extinct in the wild is to have none of a species in the wild, but instead to have some amount found in captivity. Extirpation is when a species is no longer found in an area, but are still found in other places. Dodos are extinct, there's no more of them anywhere. Mountain lions have been extirpated from the eastern United States, but we still have plenty in the western US and down in Central and South America. Arguably, extirpation is better than extinction, but it can still be terrible for an ecosystem because it messes with the often delicate interaction webs. Next is the idea of additive and compensatory mortality. Additive mortality is the concept of if killing a bunch of something leads to a decline in population, you're killing too many. Compensatory mortality is if you're killing a bunch of things, but the population's still doing alright. That was probably the same amount that would have been killed by any other natural causes, like starvation, accidents, or old age. Usually when we assess additive and compensatory mortality, we're talking about hunting. Wildlife biologists use information about population dynamics like this to determine how many of a species people are allowed to hunt per season. But it's hard to figure out whether something is additive or compensatory. Sometimes you can't be sure how much you're affecting a population. For instance, a 2011 paper cited the harvest rate for northern bobwhites could be up to 50 to 70%, but for greater sage grouse, it should only be around 10 to 15%. It depends on a lot of factors about the animal's behavior, their reproduction that year, the time of year, how many have died from other causes, and the environment, and it changes all the time. A big important thing in population dynamics is carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the number of organisms that can be held in an area, which is determined by resources, and which we touched on in the last video, along with other density-dependent factors. It's a simple concept. Populations will tend to get bigger and bigger until at some time you hit a point that they can't provide for everyone anymore. We don't need to go into all the details of it, but that's the main idea. Usually, carrying capacity is tied to food. If a population gets too big and can't afford for everyone to eat, they might start to starve and die off. Something to consider for both the cats and the prey is indirect effects too. Prey aren't together against predators, it's everyone for themselves out there. There's this idea of hyperpredation, where one prey species can affect another by allowing more of a shared predator. Let's say a clan can only hunt mice and squirrels. Maybe it's a bad year for squirrels, but a great year for mice. More mice means the forest can support more cats, but the cats won't only eat mice if they happen upon a squirrel. By going after squirrels, cats might then also allow for more mice because the mice aren't the only ones being hunted. Not only are prey fighting each other indirectly against predation, but sometimes just against each other directly. A 2011 study found that if food was scarce for shrews, sometimes they would start going after baby voles. If this happened at the same time cats were going after adult voles, it probably wouldn't be good for the vole population. How willing a predator is to switch between prey, carrying capacity of each prey species, habitat quality, and human development are all things that can affect prey populations just as much as straightforward predation, and it's important to keep in mind that these organisms don't just exist in a vacuum. Part 2. So, this video is about warrior cats, right? Yes, and I'm getting to that. So, what on earth is going on in warrior cats and predator-prey dynamics that I felt the need to explain that many concepts? Well, simply put, almost nothing. It is no secret warrior cats feels as though it took bare minimum scientific research in order to create, if any at all. When it comes to prey, here's most of what we got. We know the clans, for the most part, have just one prey they go after. ThunderClan mostly rodents and birds, SkyClan do not interact, RiverClan fish. ShadowClan, at least in the Old Forest, had some amphibians and reptiles, though their habitat now is pine forest closer to ThunderClan's territory than the marshes. And WindClan rabbits. But this isn't true of real cats at all. Real cats are both opportunists and generalists, and it's why they can be so destructive, which we'll get into in just a minute. Well, what about all those words and terms I just mentioned? How do they fit in? Some of the biggest times of famine I can remember include the events that kick off the Sun Trail, the Great Hunger and Goosefeather's Curse, and during the Destruction in Dawn. Funnily enough, none of these events seem to be directly the cause of the cats. All of these starvations take place in winter. Prey is scarce just because it's winter. At least in the case of the tribe and pre-Rusty ThunderClan, prey bounces back. While I'm not sure what caused the prey to dwindle in Goosefeather's Curse, I know in Dawn it was because the forest was being torn up by two legs. And it being winter. Both of these could have been caused by overhunting in previous moons, or the prey just having a bad season reproducing, but it's unclear. As for the tribe, it seems like they hit carrying capacity. They can no longer find enough prey to support them, and they're starting to lose elders and kits to starvation. By some of the cats dispersing to find a new home, they bring the population back down below carrying capacity, and it's easier to find resources again. There's one other time ecology is given a nod, but this time a little more directly. Misty Star's Omen takes place after the main series book The Fourth Apprentice, after the clans have dealt with the beavers and RiverClan is waiting for the fish to come back to the lake. They're struggling to feed themselves. When Beetle Whisker tells Misty Star the good news that he saw a large trout, he says Mothwing told him to leave it alone and let the fish build up their stock. Big fish have a better time reproducing than smaller fish, so Mothwing is right by telling RiverClan cats to leave them alone for the time being, even though if they were to hunt them now, it could feed the clan better. I can't recall another time in Warriors they mentioned letting prey build up better numbers before hunting again, so I was pretty excited to hear about this instance. Also, I love Beetle Whisker, but that is completely unrelated. Part 3. Real Cats and Wildlife. There's no beating around the bush here. Feral cats and wildlife are a bit of a hot topic. Like I said, cats are opportunistic and generalists. They will often take whatever they can grab. In one Swiss study of rural cats, luckily enough none of them brought home endangered species, but instead a couple water voles were brought in, which are agricultural pests in the area. So at least these cats were doing what we domesticated cats to do thousands of years ago. But in a city with high cat population and potentially vulnerable prey species, it could be really bad for the prey. Another study found that rural and suburban cat populations preyed upon native species of mice, shrews, voles, squirrels, and rabbits between 75 to 100% of the time. Coincidentally, those are the main mammalian prey portrayed in Warriors. Every cat hunts. Well, that's a stretch. In several studies, only about half the cats brought home prey, but that doesn't mean they didn't still kill something and not bring it home. In addition, the main concern isn't that some cats don't hunt, it's that any cat can. House cats don't stop hunting just because they're being fed at home. Well, what are cats actually doing then? Based on a couple studies in the UK, in 2003 cats were estimated to have killed 52 to 63 million mammals, 25 to 29 million birds, and 4 to 6 million reptiles and amphibians in a 5-month span. In a survey of cat owners recording what their cats dragged in, it was averaged each cat brought in 21 pieces of prey a year, for about 962 cats. A later study found that 275 cats killed an average of 1 adult and 3 juvenile birds per year. Cats do seem to have a higher preference for mammals than birds or herpetofauna, though. A paper that analyzed other studies on cat predation found in the United States it is estimated cats kill between 1.3 to 4 billion birds annually, but 6.3 to 22.3 billion mammals annually. Most of those kills from unowned cats. Birds in particular can make very easy targets for cats, though, because their babies are easy prey in the spring. And it can hit some birds harder than others. One study found that robins suffered more than 7 other species being studied. What's worse is island predation, where cats are brought onto islands that didn't evolve to deal with predators like them, so their native species are at risk. Cats have been cited as causing the extinctions of over 60 vertebrates on islands. Birds like New Zealand's iconic kiwis are especially at risk because they're ground-dwelling on top of not evolving to be able to deal with predators like cats. And amphibians, which are already facing a lot of threats, aren't talked about as much as mammals and birds, so we aren't sure how many of those populations are faring. That paper on cats targeting more mammals than birds said studies on herpetofauna was scarce, and from what they gathered, cats kill an estimated 228 to 871 million reptiles and 86 to 320 million amphibians annually. Interestingly enough, though, we can't forget some of the terms we've gone over. The study with robins suffering due to cat predation analyzed all the birds brought in and found that many of them were not in as good of health as those that died by accidental collisions, and indicated maybe cat predation was compensatory. Even then, it's not that simple. A fat bird might just not be as good at flying and easier to catch, and a slim bird could have been a breeding bird and taking it out of the population was additive. So, back to warriors. Warrior cats, as we've established, is weird when it comes to a lot of things. Let's talk about the Warrior Code. The Warrior Code is a set of rules that clan cats are expected to follow to maintain order. Now, there's a debate whether they should have the code at all, but that's not my concern. Let's look at Codes 3 and 4. Code 3, as written in Code of the Clans, states, "Elders and kits must be fed before apprentices and warriors." An article on the Warriors website titled "We Hunt to Survive" mentions that caring for everyone in the clan is something that sets clan cats apart from loners and rogues. Kitty pets follow the misconception that house cats don't hunt, which several scientific papers and cat owners will not hesitate to tell you is wrong. In the example story we're given of A Dark Path Chosen, Longtail feels responsible for the death of Poppydon by eating prey instead of bringing it back for the clan when sick cats need the food. This is different from how real cats work, who are rather everyone for themselves. Code 4 says that prey is killed only to be eaten. Give thanks to StarClan for its life. This is, of course, not true for real cats. They might eat some of their kills, but probably not all. In addition, in the accompanying story, Hunting Fish, Dappletail and White-Eye get in trouble for catching fish, which is considered RiverClan's prey, and then are disgusted when they have to eat it as punishment, being told, ThunderClan cats don't eat fish, RiverClan cats don't eat squirrels, ShadowClan cats don't eat rabbits. Cats might become specialized in a particular type of prey like the clans are, but once again, they're generalists. In fact, I'm pretty sure most clan cats would all eat mice, squirrels, and rabbits, but only RiverClan seems to eat fish. At least these cats have some awareness of what they're doing and using all of their resources and thanking StarClan in return. I looked through the Warriors Wiki and International Union for Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN, in research for this video to find out if the clans were a problem for any species. Well, yes and no. The books don't get very specific with what species are being hunted. They'll say mouse, but they won't say house mouse, field mouse, and harvest mouse. And from just the bare minimum, it looks like nothing the clans hunt is endangered, so that's good. The clans won't be causing any extinctions in their weird UK North America hybrid territories. And so long as they continue not to hunt mindlessly, they won't cause any extirpations either. So, now what? Well, we know cats are a tricky subject. Cats are very popular pets, and people have strong opinions about them. How do we reconcile their destruction of wildlife and our love for them? Well, that's the topic for another video, but for now this has been an assessment of warrior cats, feral cats, and prey. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all again in the next installment.